In the lawyer's office, as soon as the door closed behind us, my wife leaned forward, those long nails hitting the polished wood top, and said I needed to share everything with her before things got worse for me. I listened to his words calmly, even though I felt that familiar weight on my chest that only appears when someone tries to treat me as if I were incapable of understanding life itself. I'm over 40 years old. I spent half of them inside hospitals, entering operating rooms while many people were still sleeping, and I always thought that my busy routine would be my biggest difficulty. I never imagined that the real threat would be at home, in the sweet smile and delicate manner of someone who seemed so enchanted with life by my side. In that Atlanta office with the big windows showing the busy street outside, she thought I was the same absent-minded man she believed she controlled. She spoke loudly, firmly, almost as if she were rehearsed, saying that she was entitled to half of the company, half of the house, half of the money, and even the land I bought before I even met her. I was silent, but inside me something screamed, and I realized that there was no point in raising my voice because at that moment, I stopped being a victim. I became an observer. She had that calculated posture, as if she were winning, and didn't realize that the lawyer next to me already knew every detail of what happened weeks before. In that parachute jump, that should be a moment of rest for me. She spoke as if she were pressuring me, but I just watched her gestures and her enthusiasm in trying to intimidate me. It was as if she was so caught up in her own ambition that she couldn't notice that the mood in the room had changed. She was in a hurry. I had time. She was the one who had greed. I had the documents. Her lawyer tried to keep up with her pace, but I could tell from his expression that he wasn't as confident as she was. Maybe he knew it was going too far. Maybe he was uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation, but he stayed there because he was paid to do so. The truth is that attempt to pressure me only exposed how blind she was. She looked at me as if she was about to receive a trophy, as if she had finally reached the point she always wanted, to see me cornered, tired, and ready to give up. But she didn't know that I had already understood her game from the moment the jump instructor realized that there was something wrong with my equipment. I remember the strong wind on my face, the muffled sound during the flight, and the instructor touching my shoulder, saying that he needed to check something before takeoff. He pretended it was a safety routine, but later told me that he had seen a strange movement of her near the equipment. I didn't want to believe it at the time, but the truth came with his photos, reports, and testimony. The idea that it could all have ended there, in that jump, stuck in my mind for days. I still wake up sometimes with that feeling of falling, as if I was stuck at the exact moment I realized that I could die because of someone who swore to love me. In the office, she continued to talk about the division of assets, as if it were a common negotiation. But that meeting was not about heritage. It was about something much bigger. I watched as she gesticulated, changed her tone of voice, and tried to make me look like the ungrateful man who doesn't value family. She always knew how to use this discourse to manipulate situations. She spoke as if I were invisible, as if my effort over the years meant nothing to her. With every sentence of hers, I remembered the jump, the tampered straps, the feeling that something was wrong when I touched the equipment, the way she tried to deflect the subject when the instructor asked me to inspect everything one more time. All that was recorded, analyzed, and documented. I just had to wait for the right moment. When my lawyer opened the red folder, I felt the air in the room change. She didn't notice right away. She kept talking about what she believed she was entitled to, as if nothing could stop her victory. But when he turned the first few pages, she finally started to lose her rhythm. The sound of his voice failed. She tried to disguise it, but could not hide her discomfort. Her lawyer approached, curious, trying to understand what was on those sheets that were making her posture crumble so fast. And I remained silent, because I didn't need to win by shouting. It was enough to show the truth. When my lawyer turned the second page of that red folder, I saw her breathing quicken. She didn't realize that I was watching every detail, every movement of her fingers, every change in the way she looked at the papers. It was like seeing someone who believed he was in control finally understand that he was not in charge. She tried to maintain her posture, straightening her hair as if nothing was happening, but her eyes could no longer hide her fear. I sat quietly with my hands clasped together, waiting for the moment when she would realize that everything she had planned against me was about to appear before her own lawyer. It was strange to think that the woman with whom I shared years of my life was there, trying to defend the improbable, not knowing that every word she said only reinforced the size of the fall she was about to suffer. She wanted to see me cornered, But at that moment, she was the one who started to shrink inside. Her lawyer finally asked to see the documents. Mine pushed the folder to the center of the table and told him to start with photo number 1. When he saw it, his eyes narrowed. He put his hand to his chin, tilted his head, and asked to see the rest. She tried to get the papers back, but her lawyer held on tight as if he understood that this was too serious to ignore. I watched everything without saying a word. They were in a hurry. I had time. The photo showed the tampered closure of my parachute. The second image showed the belt cut so precisely that only someone with a clear intention would do it. The third photo was even worse. It showed her hand, recorded by the hangar's own camera, touching the equipment exactly in the area that the instructor reported as suspicious. She didn't know there were cameras there. I didn't know that the instructor had reported everything on the same day. And I didn't know that I had kept each piece of evidence in an organized way, waiting for exactly that meeting. When she finally saw the set of photos, her skin lost its color. I had never seen someone turn pale so quickly. She ran her hand over her face, as if she were trying to wake up from a nightmare. But that wasn't a bad dream. It was reality knocking on the door. She took a deep breath, but the air didn't seem to get in properly. He looked at me with contained desperation, as if asking for help without admitting that he needed it. And even at that moment, I didn't feel angry. I just felt a huge distance between us, as if shower a stranger sitting in a room with me, doing everything to save her own freedom. Her lawyer turned to her and asked in a low tone if it was real. She did not answer. He just looked away from the floor. At that moment, I realized that I didn't need to say anything. The silence said more than any accusation. My lawyer continued to calmly explain that all the contents of the folder were accompanied by testimonies, technical opinions, and official reports. He did not raise his voice. He did not make threats. He only detailed how each stage of the investigation had been conducted. I noticed that she was trying to keep up, but her mind seemed lost, as if she was trying to understand where she had gone wrong. Maybe you were wondering how I found out or when I realized it. Maybe she was remembering the jump, the smile she gave before getting on the plane, the way she pretended to be moved by the experience. The problem is that she never imagined that the instructor had paid attention to her behavior. And she never imagined that he was experienced enough to recognize a strange movement in someone messing with someone else's equipment. Gradually, every word from my lawyer seemed to undo that mask of confidence she had worn since the beginning of the meeting. She tried to argue, saying that it could be a coincidence that maybe she had touched it unintentionally, that she didn't know she was being recorded, but her voice trembled too much to be convincing. Her lawyer tried to maintain a professional posture, but I realized that he was already mentally recalculating the strategy, because that situation was no longer a discussion about the division of assets. It was a criminal case waiting to happen. I remembered the phrase I always repeated to myself when I was in the hospital. Sometimes the best answer is written in a notary's office. And in that instant, it made more sense than ever. She tried to get up from her chair and said she needed some time, but my lawyer asked her to sit down, explaining that there were more documents that needed to be seen. When he opened the envelope with the messages exchanged between her and her accomplice, it was as if the floor had disappeared under her feet. The messages were too explicit. There was no denying it. She talked about enjoying my busy routine, about seeing myself exhausted, about how easy it would be to get distracted on the day of the jump, about trusting that the fall would be interpreted as an accident. I felt a shiver run down my back when I heard my name in the messages. It was strange to see everything written in such a straightforward way, as if my life had been treated as a throwaway idea between two people who thought nothing would be discovered. My lawyer read each message quietly, but clear enough that no one would pretend they didn't understand. When he finished, silence took over the room again. She put her hand to her mouth, as if she wanted to hold back her tears, but I knew it wasn't regret. It was the desperation of someone who had always believed he was above the consequences. My revenge was not to fight. It was letting her lose alone. And in that office, what was once an attack on me became the beginning of her downfall, because she finally understood that she wasn't just facing a tired husband. I was facing the truth. When she finally found the strength to ask for a glass of water, her lawyer put his hand on her shoulder and said she'd better take a deep breath. I just watched the scene, sitting in the same place without moving a muscle. It was like watching someone who always believed he had the upper hand trying to accept that the tables had turned around. She looked at me with a mixture of anger and fear, as if she was looking for some loophole to escape from that situation. but there was nowhere to run. The room seemed smaller, tighter, as if the air had become too heavy for her. I knew that this moment would be difficult, but I never imagined that I would see her so out of control, almost unable to maintain her own speech. She had always thought she could intimidate me with threats, but now she was the one who needed the strength to keep breathing. Her lawyer asked for a few minutes, but my lawyer replied that there was still information that needed to be read before any pause was considered. He opened another envelope, this time with the jump instructor's full technical report, detailing point by point what had been found in the parachute and backup equipment. The document described the intentional failure of the straps, the attempt to change the safety latch, and the real risk of death if the instructor had not noticed the problem before takeoff. She leaned her back against the chair when she heard this, as if gravity had bent on top of her. Her eyes got teary, but not because she was sorry. It was the sheer panic of someone who knew that his actions were now on display before 2 witnesses and 2 lawyers. I remembered the day of the jump. I remembered the moment when the instructor took me aside, the cautious way he looked at me before speaking, as if he was afraid that I would not believe the story he was about to tell. He told me that he saw her messing with my equipment, and that this was not normal. He said that it sparked an immediate alert in his mind, because no one touches another person's parachute for no reason. I recalled the strange feeling I had that day, the feeling that something was out of place, even before I got on the plane. Now, in the office, all these memories came back as fragments of a movie that I never wanted to watch, but that I had to face to understand the size of the risk I took. She began to babble a few sentences trying to justify the unjustifiable. He said that maybe he had touched the equipment out of curiosity, that he didn't know that it could be dangerous. Her lawyer asked her to stop talking, trying to avoid getting even more complicated, but she insisted on creating some explanation that would help her escape responsibility. It was like seeing someone clinging to their own lies, even though they knew they had already broken in the middle of the table. I remained silent, because I didn't need to convince her of anything. The truth was there, and it could not be erased. My lawyer calmly explained that the sabotage was not just a moral failing, it was a clear attempted murder. He made this very clear, without changing his tone of voice. He said that the authorities could be informed if I decided to go down that path, and that that material would be enough to open an immediate investigation. She widened her eyes when she heard this. It wasn't about losing assets, nor about a difficult divorce. It was about losing freedom. It was about facing the real consequences of a plan that she believed would never be discovered. The room became even quieter when her lawyer asked if she had anything to say. She just lowered her head. For the first time, he seemed to understand that all that strong attitude he showed when he got there was no longer worth anything. I remembered another phrase that I carried with me for many years. They had greed. I had the documents. And at that moment, that sentence seemed written exactly for that situation. She had been repeating for weeks that she was entitled to half of everything I built, but she never imagined that while she planned to take my life, I was gathering everything I needed to protect my story. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted the truth exposed, and it was there, clear as daylight. She took a deep breath, put her hands on her forehead, and stood motionless for a few seconds. Perhaps he was trying to understand how he had lost control. Perhaps he was realizing that in trying to destroy me life, he ended up destroying his own. When she raised her face, her eyes were red. She looked smaller, worn out, as if that whole plan had sucked her strength. Her lawyer asked if she wanted to try to explain anything before we went any further. She tried to speak, but her voice did not come out. It was as if the throat was locked. I felt a mixture of distance and pity, but it wasn't pity for her. It was sorry for the path she chose, the size of the fall she caused in her own life by trying to manipulate mine. Silence hung over us all, too heavy to be broken by any words. And it was only then that I realized that this was the real turning point. She finally understood that she wasn't dealing with the distracted man she thought she knew. It was in front of someone who saw everything, put everything away, and now calmly showed that he didn't need to shout to put everything in its place. When the silence became too heavy, my lawyer pushed another document to the center of the table. It was the report of the expert hired to evaluate all the jump equipment. As soon as her lawyer took the paper, I saw his expression change again, as if he was reading something he didn't want to believe. He ran his hand over the page carefully, as if confirming each line to make sure he is not misunderstanding. As for her, my ex-wife, she just looked ahead, as if she were stuck in a fixed point of the wall, trying not to collapse right there. I watched everything unhurriedly because in that instant it knew that the truth by itself had more force than any words I could say. The room seemed smaller, but at the same time every detail was clearer. She breathed fast, fighting something she had already lost. Her lawyer finally stared at her and asked in a firmer tone this time if there was anything he should know before continuing to represent the case. She did not answer. He just fiddled with his own hand, as if counting the seconds to disappear from there. It was curious to see how someone who entered that room saying he was going to destroy me could now barely support himself in his own chair. The truth does that. It dismantles those who live by threats. I remembered the phrase that came back to my mind at that time. They spoke as if I were invisible. And it was true. For months she thought I didn't see anything. I didn't understand anything. I didn't understand anything. But seeing does not mean reacting. Sometimes it just means waiting for the right moment. My lawyer continued to explain the details of the report. He talked about the precise cut in the main belt, about the attempt to camouflage the tampering to look like natural wear and tear, about the locking mechanism that almost didn't work in the later test. She put her hand to her chest, as if trying to hold her own heart in place. I watched her for a few seconds, trying to understand at what point she had become this person. I found no answer. Maybe she had always been like this and I just didn't want to see it. Perhaps her ambition grew over time, fueled by my constant work, the comforts of our life, travel, and the things she claimed to value. But now I realized never had real value. The truth is, for her, I was just an opportunity. When my lawyer mentioned that the instructor was willing to testify, she closed her eyes, as if it were the last straw to bring down the entire castle. He explained that his statement was attached there, describing exactly the moment he saw her moving the equipment and how it caught his attention immediately. Her lawyer rubbed his face, clearly annoyed because he knew that a direct report from an experienced professional made the situation even more serious. She tried to say something, but her voice came out weak, choked. He said that it was all just a misunderstanding, that he would never have the courage to harm me. But the sentence fell to the ground before it was even finished. Nobody believed it, not even her. I leaned forward a little, just to look into her eyes, and saw something I had never seen before, the recognition that she had lost. He did not lose the discussion. He lost control of his own history. He lost his disguise. He lost the hold he believed he had over me. And she lost, because she underestimated the one thing she should never have ignored. I watched everything. I kept everything. And at that moment, without raising my voice, I put each piece in its proper place. Her lawyer asked if she wanted to continue with the hearing that day. She hesitated, but eventually nodded, as if she understood that running away wouldn't change anything else. My lawyer then opened the last envelope, containing the audio recording in which he tries to distract the instructor while touching the lock on the equipment. When her voice echoed through the room, her breath stopped. The sound was clear, unmistakable, and destroyed any attempt at defense. I heard the despair in its own tone, not the despair of those who fear being caught, but the despair of those who try to ensure that the plan succeeds. Hearing that again made my stomach tighten, but it also gave me a strange sense of relief. Not because I wanted to see her suffer, but because finally, all the masks had fallen. She put her face in her hands. Her lawyer sighed deeply, looking at her as if realizing he can no longer protect her. I leaned back in my chair. They were in a hurry. I had time. My revenge was not to fight. It was letting her face her own reflection for the first time. And in that office, surrounded by the truth she tried to hide, she finally understood that the plan she created against me only served to destroy herself. When the audio ended, the room was so quiet that I could even hear the sound of their conditioning cutting through the room. She kept her face covered by her hands for a few seconds, but then raised her head slowly, like someone who realizes that there is no point in trying to hide anything anymore. Her expression was not one of regret. It was one of dread, terrified of understanding that all the speech he brought to that room, all the confidence, all the threat, all the staging, it was no longer worth even half of one of the pieces of evidence on the table. Her lawyer closed his eyes for a few moments as if was rearranging his own thoughts, because from that moment on he was no longer defending just a marital dispute. He was dealing with a crime. I knew that this was the definitive turnaround. There was no longer any way for her to place herself as a victim. There was no longer any way to pretend surprise. There was no longer any way to invent explanations. She had been caught up in her own arrogance. And now, for the first time, he realized the size of the fall he built with his own hands. My lawyer put his arms on the table and, with the same calmness he had maintained from the beginning, explained that all the evidence was organized and ready to be used legally. He also said that, depending on my decision, the case could be taken to the authorities later that same afternoon. She widened her eyes again, as if it had directly affected the little balance that remained. I kept looking at her, firm, without hostility, but with the clarity of someone who knows exactly what is happening. It was strange. For months, she tried to take advantage of my busy routine, my confidence, my tiredness. She counted on the fact that I would never suspect anything. And for a long time she was right. I didn't really see it, or he didn't want to see it. But when I realized, he saw it all at once. And in that office, she finally understood that. She tried to speak, but her voice failed. She took a deep breath, clasped her hands in her lap and said that she was willing to talk, that she didn't want anything to be carried forward, that it had all been a mistake, a moment of weakness. My lawyer replied firmly that a mistake does not involve planning, messages exchanged, manipulation of equipment, and real risk of death. She lowered her head again, as if she were being pushed into her own guilt. It was possible to see that she was looking for some way out, anything that could lessen the impact of it, but there was nowhere else to hide. Her lawyer finally said that it would be better to end the meeting and reschedule, but my lawyer informed me that there was only one thing left: the signing of the agreement. The agreement I had prepared before I even entered that room. I pulled the document closer, slowly turned to her side and said, still silently, that I wanted her to read it. She reached out with a slight tremor. The document was simple, straightforward, and impossible to dispute. She would not be entitled to anything she was trying to claim. Nothing from the company, nothing from the house, nothing from the savings, nothing from the clinic, nothing of the heritage that he had not helped to build. And in addition, there was a clause making it clear that if she tried to reopen the process or create any kind of conflict, the evidence would be handed over immediately to the authorities. I didn't have to explain to her what that meant. She read each line as if she were signing her own withdrawal, because that was exactly what it was. She looked at me again, but this time without anger, without strength, without that look of victory that she brought when she arrived. It was a blank, tired, defeated look, a look that said she knew she had no other choice. I didn't feel any pleasure at that moment. It wasn't about winning. It was about putting the truth in its proper place. Her ambition, her plan, her threat, all this only served to create the end itself. She picked up the pen with her hand still shaking and signed it. The sound of the pen scratching the paper seemed to echo throughout the office, as if marking the end of something that should never have begun. When she finished, she put down her pen, took a deep breath and stood there motionless. Her lawyer put away some papers quickly, without looking at me, as if he was wishing it would all be over soon. My lawyer closed the agreement, organized everything in a folder and said that the meeting was over. She stood up slowly, avoiding my gaze, and left the room without saying anything else. The door closed behind her with a dry sound, and in that instant I felt something I hadn't felt since the day of the jump. Relief. A heavy, deep relief. One of those that come when we finally understand that we have survived something that could have been fatal. Sometimes the best answer is written in a notary's office. And that afternoon, that's exactly what life showed me.